Hi everyone, it's Mr. G, and I want to thank you so much for joining me in this final installment of my three-part series on creating a deck of cards, shuffling it, and now identifying a poker hand, which is what we're going to do in this video. As I was trying to think about what to do in this video, I stumbled upon a Mr. Beast video where he counted from 1 to 100,000. And that kind of inspired me to try to shuffle a deck and keep dealing out 5 cards until I got a royal flush. Obviously, I'm not a real sicko or as crazy as Mr. Beast. I'm a coder and I'm a teacher. So I thought it would be really cool to make the computer do it for me. And let's see how many times it takes it to shuffle a deck and take out a royal flush in the first 5 cards. So we're going to build upon the foundation that we created in the first 2 videos. So if you haven't watched those, make sure to check them out. I'll put them in the description below so that you fully understand where we're going to build from. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, I would appreciate it if you give it a like, if you enjoy or learn something from the video. And if you want to see future videos of mine, make sure to subscribe because I have some really cool ones coming up in the pipeline. For those of you that don't know the game of poker, what you're essentially trying to do is create a 5-card hand that beats someone else's 5-card hand. Or you're trying to bet and convince them that your hand beats their hand, which is called bluffing, but we're not going to get into that right now. What we're going to get into is how to identify what hand you actually have. So let's take a look at this hand ranking chart. Poker hands go up in value as they become more rare probability-wise. So a hand that is more rare will beat out a hand that has a higher probability of showing up or appearing on this ranking chart. So the chance of me dealing out a 5-card hand and having absolutely no pair is really close to 50%, whereas the chance of getting 1 pair is around 42%. For 2 pair, it's about 4.75%. And the probabilities keep decreasing until we get to the best hand possible, which is a royal flush. And a royal flush is 5 cards of the same suit, in sequential order from the 10 to the ace. The probability of dealing out a royal flush, so taking 5 cards randomly and getting a royal flush, is 0.000154%. That means that the odds against that happening are 649,739 to 1. So this means that, on average, every 649,740 times that I do this, I will get 1 royal flush. Now, because I'm not as crazy as Mr. Beast to try to do something like this in real life, let's figure out how to get the computer to do it for us. So I'm going to cheat over here, a little bit, kind of. And the reason for that is because I don't want to write the code that can detect a poker hand from scratch, from absolute scratch. Because to do so would really be reinventing the wheel, and it's going to take a long time to actually figure out and make a multi-part series on. But I don't think it'll be that interesting. I think what'll be more interesting is if I can show you how you can use other people's code, because I'm sure hundreds or thousands of people have already created packages or libraries that others can use in their projects to detect their poker hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use npmjs.com for those of you interested. And npm stands for Node Package Manager. And what npm does is they allow anyone to put up a package or a library that anyone else can then use in their code. You just have to download and install it. And it's really easy to do using the terminal. So I'm going to look on npm to try to find a library that allows me to detect poker hands, because I'm sure there already is one. So let's go to Google and type in npm.js poker hands. And let's check out the first one. Let's see if this will be helpful. And poker hands, let's see, it was published 5 years ago. It has very few weekly downloads. But let's see. But in the card game of poker, we have our hand rankings here. So just like I mentioned before, we could see all the different hand rankings. It tells us how the cards are valued. It also tells us how to install it. So we have to go into our terminal. As long as we have Node.js installed, we can type in npm install poker-hands and it'll install it. And then we can bring it into our project. Let's see, the usage. How do we use it? So here's the thing. When you use someone else's library, you don't know exactly how it's working. This is just an abstraction of a whole bunch of different methods that they wrote. So you have to read the documentation to try to understand what the author was or the creator was doing. So we have a method here that allows us to judge a winner. So we could see if we can compare 2 hands and see if one is a winner or the other. If the first one is the winner or the second one. We can see the highest card. We have has pair, has 2 pair, 3 of a kind, straight flush, and let's see, do we have a royal? Yeah, we have a royal flush. We can detect a royal flush by using this method. So has a royal flush, we'll return a Boolean if the hand has a royal flush. But what I'm noticing is that the way that their hand is formatted, it's a string that has a space in between each card. And what we have right now in our project is an array. We have our whole deck, and we have an array of cards. Each of them is a string, but it is an array. It's not a string. So what we have to do is we're going to have to take our deck of cards. We're going to have to maybe what we could do is we could take the first 5 cards from the array. So I'm going to have to figure out how to remove elements from an array. And then what we can do is convert those 5 cards, that array, into a string. So there must be some method, there must be some built-in JavaScript methods that will allow us to take an array and convert it into a string and put a space in between each. That way this library can use that, or we can use this library. Maybe the other way around is more correct. All right, so let's go to our code, see what we have, and we'll continue from there. Before I install the library and start coding, I actually have written down my plan of attack here, so you understand exactly what I'm trying to do. I want to create a 5-card poker hand from the first 5 cards in our shuffled deck, so we have to figure out how to remove those elements from an array. We have to convert that array, because when we remove the elements, we're still going to have an array. We have to convert that into a string with each card separated by 1 space. Then I'm going to install the poker hands library and use one of its methods to identify the poker hand. So maybe we could detect if we have a royal flush, or we could see what methods are inside of there that we can then use logically. But we'll have to look in there. We'll have to explore. The next thing we'll do is create a loop that will shuffle the deck, take out the first 5 cards, and determine the hand strength using the poker hands library. And we want to count how many times we loop until we get that royal flush, which is our goal here. All right, so let's actually start figuring this out. So the first thing is I want to be able to pick out the first 5 cards in the array of the deck of cards. So I'm going to type in JavaScript, what would I type in? Remove elements from array. There we go. So you'll see Google is Google is going to be your best friend. And it might be one of these, but I'm going to go into the Mozilla documentation, and I'm going to see how I can use maybe this method, this splice method, to remove an item or do something with it. So this says that the splice method changes the contents of an array by removing or replacing existing elements. So that's exactly what I want. I want to remove the elements from the array of cards that we have, the shuffled deck. Now, how do we do that? How do we remove the elements? So it shows us how to replace, how to insert. Let's see. Okay, the starting index. So actually this tells us we can pass in the index of the first card that we want. So that's going to be 0, right? We want to start it. We just want to take the first 5 cards. It doesn't matter which 5, but might as well take the first 5. And then we are going to, let's see, the delete count is the number of elements in the array to remove. So we can pass in 0 and we can pass in 5, and then we can get the first 5 elements of that array. So let's go back to our code and let's actually use this. Let's start coding this up. So let me create a variable that's going to be our 5-card hand. And we're going to set it equal to the first 5 cards that we removed from the array. So I'm going to call my deck. Actually, right now it's test deck, right? We shuffled the test deck. So I'm going to call the test deck and run the splice method on it. And I'm going to pass in the index of the first card that I want to take out and the number of cards that I want to take out from that. So it's going to be 0, 5. You'll also see that because of my code editor, as I'm typing in, there's something called, I think IntelliSense it's called. So it's showing me what options are available to me in terms of which parameters I have to use and stuff like that. Okay, so now we have our 5-card hand. I just want to log it out. Console.log, make sure that I'm getting my 5-card hand from here. So I'm actually going to use the terminal for this. I could use the terminal that's built into VS Code, but I want to be old school a little bit and use my own terminal. All right, so we have to go into the desktop, and in the desktop, I'm going to run 52 cards because that's what I named this. I could do .js, but I don't really have to. I could just type in node 52 cards, and we should get a 5-card hand. Okay, so we get the whole deck because I'm logging it on line 27, but we also get my first 5 cards here, which is the 8 of hearts, 8 of diamonds, 10 of clubs, and so on. And that's exactly what the first 5 elements in the array were. All right, so we have our poker hand. I'm gonna cancel, or I'm actually gonna comment out line 27, and I don't need to see that, if my 5 cards are correct, because it actually works. I could see that it just worked. So I'm gonna like test it as I go through, because I don't want to just keep coding and then like face a bug and then not know where it came from. Okay, so the next thing is that I want to take this array of 5 cards and convert it into a string. So to do that, let's go back to Google. All right, and I'm going to type in JavaScript array to string with a separator. So the separator will be like what we want to separate the items by. So I could do array to string, but I'm going to select the one with the separator. And it looks like the first link is to use the join method. So to use join, let's see, it returns the array as a string, which is what I want. And how does the separator work? The separator to be used if omitted. So if we don't put anything inside of the parentheses, the elements are separated with a comma. But I want it to be a space. So I'm assuming that I'm gonna have to put a little string in there with the space. So I can just put like a single quote or double quotes and then put a space there. They don't give any examples, I don't think. Do they give an example? No, but let's try it out. Let's go back to our code. And let's run that method, run the join method on my 5 card hand. So let me actually create a new variable. We keep creating new variables, but I just do it to stay sane over here because I don't really want to modify the original. So I'm going to call this the 5 card hand string. And it really probably isn't a great idea to name it this, but this is going to work for us for now because it's going to be very obvious that we should be dealing with the string here. And I'm going to initialize this variable to 5 card hand. We'll run the join method on it. And then when I open parentheses, it tells us in the IntelliSense thing that I mentioned before, it tells us in this little box, a string that is used to separate one element from another. So we're going to create a string and we're going to put a space in between. Okay, that's perfect. So now I want to log out. I want to console.log my 5 card string here, 5 card hand string, just to make sure that it actually works. And actually, I also want to log out the type, its type, just to make sure that it is a string. So I'm gonna use the type of keyword and do 5 card hand string. So it should say string when I run this code. So let me bring back my terminal. Let me clear out what we have here and let's run it again. Perfect. So now we have a string, but actually it says that the type of the hand is an object. Why is that? Oh, because I did the type of the 5 card hand. I didn't do the type of the 5 card hand string, this new variable that I created. So let me just rerun that. And there we go. Now it says string. So now I know that I can use this inside of that library. Now the next thing I want to do is install my poker hands library. And to do that, I'm going to type in npm install poker-hands. And npm is already built into Node. So if you don't have Node installed, which allows you to run JavaScript outside of the browser, you must have that installed first. But once you do, it comes with Node Package Manager built in, npm, and now we can just run this in our terminal. So I'm going to hit enter, and what it's going to do is it's going to go to that website, download the files that that creator created, or that author created, and now I can use it in my project. I just have to make sure that I bring it in to the top of this project. So let's go back to our code. Let me go to the top of the project and let me just create a constant. We're going to call it poker. I think that was the example they used, or the name that they used. And I'm going to type in require, and in quotes, poker hands. So this is telling JavaScript, hey, find the poker hands library because we can use its methods now inside of here. So once I run that, once I have that in there, we can actually access its methods by typing in poker dot, and now we can see all of the methods that are available to us. So we can see everything that is that the author put inside of that library. So get hand strength is probably what I'm going to use. I also see has royal flush, so we could check with a boolean to see if a hand has a royal flush. But I'm going to actually use get hand strength and see how that one works. So get hand strength. To see how it works, you kind of like open up a parentheses and you could see, oh, you have to pass it in. You could see the you can see the arguments that it takes in. So this will take in any hand or a hand of any type, and it'll return something. It'll return a number. So you can see that it'll return a number because it's right next to that colon. So it's going to spit back a number that probably represents the strength of that hand. I'm assuming that's what it does. So let's actually pass in a hand. So let's pass in the 5-card hand string that we've just created just above. So when we run this, actually let me add some let me put this in a console.log. So the hand is, and here we go. We're going to concatenate this this message here. So now back in the code, when I run this, so I'm going to type in node 52 cards. We see that we have the hand is 8. So the hand is number 8. So I'm assuming that that is on the hand rankings chart. Let's run it one more time, see what we get. The hand is 9. So in the second hand, it looks like there is no pair. In the first hand, we have a pair. So one pair looks like it's number 8. In the second hand, we don't have a pair. So it looks like it's a high card, and the hand is number 9. So I'm assuming that if we go up the ladder, maybe hand 7 would be 2 pair. And we keep going all the way up, we can see what those hands represent. So we really have to keep looping until we get to hand 1 or 0 or something like that. I'm assuming they start at 0, so a royal flush is probably 0. But we'll find out. We'll find out by trial and error here. Okay, so we have this so far. The next thing we want to do is create a loop that's going to shuffle the deck, remove the first 5 cards, and determine the hand strength. So we want to put everything we kind of just did inside of a loop. So we could run it multiple times. So let me think. Let's see. How do we want to do this? You know what? Let's just run this 10 times. Let's just create a simple for loop, get it running 10 times just to see like what happens, and then we'll go from there. We'll probably have to use a different type of loop, maybe a while loop or a do while loop, so that we keep going until we get a certain hand ranking. And what I want to do here is I want to shuffle the deck. So we're going to take some of the code we've already written. I'm going to shuffle the deck, remove the first 5 cards, and determine the hand strength. So everything I just described, we are going to put inside of this loop. Let me save it first so I can go back in case I don't want this. And let me just put everything we just did inside of this loop. So we're going to do this 10 times. Back in the terminal, we just go up, we run it, and we can see that we have 10 hands, and it tells us the hand strength. So the hand is 9, we have an 8 over here, so that must be a pair. Yes, it's a pair of deuces. Let's see, do we have any better hands? Nope. Let me do it one more time. 8, 9. So keep in mind, this is probability, right? So as long as we just keep going, eventually we're going to get better and better hands. Or we're going to get better hands. So right here we have a number 7. We have a 7 hand, which is a 2-pair hand. So we have 2 pair 5s and 8s. So let's see. 2 pair is going to be 7. Okay. 3 of a kind is going to be 6. A straight is going to be 5. A flush is going to be 4. Let's see. A full house is going to be 3. 4 of a kind is going to be 2. A straight flush is probably going to be 1, and then a royal flush is probably going to be 0. So I just worked my way up the ladder, and I'm assuming that we're going to keep going until we get to 0, because that's what I want to do. I want to keep count of how many times it takes me to get a royal flush. So let's see. Let's, instead of looping it 10 times, because I mean, we're just going to have to keep going until we get a royal, why don't we use a different type of loop, like I mentioned before. Let's do a loop. Let's run a loop that will keep running until we get our poker hand strength of 0. So I think a do while loop. It's not very common to use a do while loop, I don't think. So, but I'm gonna use it because, you know, who cares? I'm gonna do whatever works here. So I'm gonna bring this into my my loop here. Let me remove the for loop. We're not gonna use that for loop. And in this loop, we create a deck, we shuffle it, we get the hand, we turn it into a string, and then we could console.log the hand strength. So we want to run this while the poker.getHandStrength is greater than 0, because once it hits 0, that means we've got a royal. So outside of this loop, I'm going to create a variable. We're going to call it counter, set it equal to 0. And every time we run this, we are going to increase counter by 1. So I'll do counter plus plus. So if I do this, this will tell me how many times it takes, and it'll show me the royal too, because I'm actually console.logging that hand. But this will tell me how many times it takes me to get a royal flush. Actually, before I do the royal flush, let's just change that. Let's do, I don't know, let's try number 3. So let's see if this actually works for not a royal flush, but another type of another hand. And I just realized that I used this incorrectly. I have to make sure that I check it against the 5-card hand string, not that, but the 5-card hand string. Okay, I just realized when I ran it that it only ran one time. All right, so now that I think I have it all good, let me run this code again. And we got to the hand is 3. So hand number 3 it's a full house. It's 3 of a kind and a pair. So perfect. But I don't know how many times it took to get here. So I want to make sure that I display console.log. It took, let's see, counter times. And let me put that in a string to get that number. And I'll put that outside of the loop. So now when I run this, let me just clear this. Let me run this code. I can see how many times it took before I actually got a full house. So we have a full house, queens full of 4s, and it took 224 tries. Let me actually increase by 1. So let me go up to a 4 of a kind, which is number 2. Okay, so let me save this. Let me run our code, and let's see how many times it takes us to get 4 of a kind. 149 times. But on average, it's probably going to take a lot more times. 2,694. If I want to run it again, 5,981. All right, so let's go to the big daddy, the moment of truth, the 0 one, which is the royal. Let us see how many times it takes to get a royal flush. So on average, as I said, it's going to be like 650,000 times on average before we get one royal. Let's run it. And I just got an error because I erased one of the parentheses. Okay, there we go. Now my while loop is happy, and I should be able to run this. All right, so it took 115,000 times before I got my first royal. It's a royal flush of hearts. So you can see it's from the 10 all the way up to the ace of hearts. All right, so that's pretty cool. But if I keep running it, so that was pretty lucky actually when you think about it. But if I do this multiple times, if I do it an infinite number of times, I should say, because of the law of large numbers, it's going to happen about once every 650,000 times. So the next time I run it, it could happen on the first try, if I'm really lucky, or it could happen on like, the 5 millionth shuffle. On average, it's going to be about 650,000 times before I get one. So I hope you found this video to be helpful. It was actually a lot of fun to make, so all I ask of you, if you enjoyed it or if you learned something, is to hit the like button. And if you want to see my next videos that are coming up, make sure to subscribe, because I have a really cool one coming up on Python. So one of my former students in high school, she is working on a project in Python, and I've been like diving into Python, learning it and using it. So I'm going to make a video series of that coming soon. So make sure to subscribe so you get notified when it comes out. If you have any questions or comments, make sure to leave them down below and I will get back to you pretty quickly, and I'll see you in the next video.
Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer who lost a